I walked into what used to be my children's bedroom and found their blood still fresh on the walls. My daughter Emma's favorite teddy bear was soaked red, and my son Tyler's homework was scattered across the floor like confetti at a funeral. 10 dirty cops thought they could murder my babies and call it gang violence. They had no idea their biggest mistake was leaving their father alive. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. The smell hit me first. Metallic, thick, wrong. I'd smelled death before in Afghanistan, but this was different. This was home. This was supposed to be safe. My hands were still shaking from the 13-hour flight from Kandahar. 72 hours of emergency leave. That's all command gave me when they delivered the news. Sergeant Blake Morrison, your children have been killed in a home invasion. You have 72 hours. Just like that. Your life is over. Here's 3 days to process it. The front door was hanging off its hinges. Yellow police tape everywhere like some sick party decoration. I ducked under it and stepped into my own house that now felt like a crime scene from hell. Emma? Tyler? I called out, knowing they wouldn't answer, but needing to hear their names in this silence. The living room looked like a war zone. Furniture overturned, family photos scattered and broken, my wife Kendra's favorite lamp shattered against the wall. But something felt wrong. Too staged. Too perfect. I'd seen real violence. Real chaos. This looked like someone trying very hard to make it look like chaos. My boots crunched on broken glass as I moved toward the hallway. Each step felt like walking through quicksand. The walls were covered with family photos, Emma's school plays, Tyler's baseball games, Christmas mornings when everything was perfect. The bedroom doors were both open. Both rooms destroyed. But it was Emma's room that broke me. My 8-year-old daughter's pink walls were painted with something that wasn't paint. Her princess bed was overturned, but tucked carefully underneath was her diary. Too carefully, like someone wanted it found. I picked it up with trembling hands and opened to the last entry. Daddy, if something happens to me, look for the camera I hid behind my bookshelf. Mommy doesn't know about it. She's been meeting strange men when you're gone. They scare me. I love you. The world stopped spinning. Emma had hidden a camera. My baby girl had been scared, and I wasn't here to protect her. I raced to her bookshelf and found it. A tiny digital camera tucked behind her Nancy Drew books. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn it on. The screen flickered to life, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. 10 men in police uniforms standing in my living room, not responding to a crime scene. Creating one. Make it look like gang violence, one of them said. I recognized him. Officer Mason Reed from the local precinct. He'd been to our backyard barbecues. He'd watched Tyler play catch. What about the kids? Another voice asked. Mason's response will haunt me forever. They saw too much. They know about the operation. Handle it. The camera kept rolling as I watched these monsters, these sworn officers, systematically destroy my family. But the worst part wasn't the violence. It was seeing my wife Kendra walk into the frame, hand in hand with Mason, stepping over my children's bodies like they were nothing. Is it done? She asked casually, checking her phone. Your husband will never know, Mason replied, kissing her forehead. By the time he gets back from Afghanistan, this will just be another unsolved case. My legs gave out. I fell to my knees in my daughter's bedroom, clutching the camera that contained the last moments of my children's lives. They hadn't died in a random home invasion. They'd been executed by 10 dirty cops. And my own wife had ordered the hit. I sat in Emma's destroyed bedroom for what felt like hours, watching that footage over and over. Each replay carved deeper into my soul, but I forced myself to study every detail with the tactical precision my special forces training had drilled into me. Mason Reed wasn't just any dirty cop. He was the lead detective on my children's case. The same man who'd called me in Afghanistan with his fake condolences. I'm so sorry for your loss, Sergeant Morrison. We're doing everything we can to find the animals who did this. Animals. He'd called himself and his crew animals without even realizing it. The camera had captured more than just the murder. In the background, I could see duffel bags full of cash, plastic-wrapped packages that looked like drugs, and most damning of all, official police evidence bags being filled with planted weapons. They weren't just dirty cops. They were running a full operation out of my own home while I was deployed, using my wife as their inside person. My phone buzzed. A text from Kendra. "Baby, I know you're hurting. I'm staying at my sister's house. This place has too many memories. The funeral is tomorrow. I love you." I stared at that message for a long time. 3 months ago, I would have driven straight to comfort her. Now I knew I was looking at the words of my children's murderer, but I needed more evidence. The video was damning, but I needed to understand the full scope of their operation. As a special forces operative, I knew that rushing in without complete intelligence was suicide. I carefully extracted the memory card from Emma's camera and hid the original in a secure location only I knew about. Then I began my reconnaissance. The police report on my kitchen table was a masterpiece of fiction. According to Detective Mason Reed's official account, unknown gang members had broken in around 2 a.m., killed the children in a botched robbery, and escaped with jewelry and electronics. But Emma's timestamp showed the murders happened at 6 p.m., right when Kendra usually started dinner. The report listed missing items that were still sitting right in front of me. My laptop, Kendra's jewelry box, Tyler's gaming system, all exactly where they'd always been. These cops weren't just sloppy. They were arrogant. They thought a grieving soldier would never question their story. I opened my laptop and began cross-referencing the faces I'd seen in Emma's video with the police department roster. 10 officers total, all from different departments, city police, county sheriff, even 2 state troopers. This wasn't some random corruption. This was organized crime with badges. My military training kicked in. I pulled out a notebook and started mapping their network like I would any enemy combatant cell. Names, ranks, connections, probable operation structure. Then I found something that made my blood freeze. Mason Reed's partner on the case was Detective Quinn Hayes, my next-door neighbor. The man who'd helped me install Emma's swing set. The man who'd taught Tyler how to throw a curveball. Quinn had been in my house dozens of times. He knew our routines, our security, when I'd be deployed. He'd been gathering intelligence on my family for months. The doorbell rang, snapping me back to reality. Through the peephole, I saw Quinn himself standing on my porch in his civilian clothes, holding a casserole dish and wearing his best concerned neighbor expression. I quickly hid all my evidence and opened the door. "Blake, buddy," Quinn said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Cindy made you some food. Figured you shouldn't be alone right now." I looked into the eyes of one of my children's killers and smiled. "Quinn, thank you so much. Come in." As he stepped into my house, I noticed his eyes scanning everything, checking what I'd found, what I'd moved, whether I suspected anything. "How are you holding up?" he asked, setting the casserole on my kitchen counter, right next to the police report he'd helped fabricate. "It's hard," I replied, watching him carefully. "But Mason's been great. Really thorough investigation." Quinn nodded. "Mason's the best. If anyone can catch these animals, it's him." There was that word again. Animals. I keep thinking. I continued, testing him. If only Emma and Tyler had hidden somewhere. Maybe they saw something that could help identify the killers. For just a split second, Quinn's comfortable mask slipped. His eyes darted toward Emma's bedroom, and I saw something that looked like panic. "Kids don't usually think that clearly in situations like that," he said quickly. "Probably better they didn't see anything. Would have just traumatized them more. Before they were murdered, this monster was standing in my kitchen, eating my food, and talking about sparing my children additional trauma before executing them." "Yeah, you're probably right," I agreed. "Good thing there's nothing for me to find." Quinn relaxed visibly. "Exactly. Best thing you can do is let the professionals handle this and focus on healing." After he left, I realized something crucial. They were monitoring me. Not just Quinn's visit. This was reconnaissance. They needed to know if their perfect crime was still perfect, which meant they were scared. which meant they'd made mistakes. And I was going to find every single one. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I did what special forces train me to do, gather intelligence on the enemy. But this enemy lived in my bed for 6 years and gave birth to my children. I broke into Kendra's laptop using skills the military never intended for domestic warfare. What I found in her search history made me understand why Emma had been so scared. Kendra hadn't just been cheating. She'd been living a completely different life. Bank transfers to offshore accounts. Encrypted messaging apps I'd never seen before. Flight reservations to countries that don't extradite. But the most damning evidence was buried in her deleted photos folder. Pictures of her and Mason Reed in expensive hotels. Not just any hotels, the kind that cost more than my monthly military salary. Pictures of her wearing jewelry I'd never seen, driving cars we couldn't afford, living like a millionaire while I was getting shot at in Afghanistan. But it wasn't the luxury that destroyed me. It was the dates. These photos went back 3 years. 3 years of lies, betrayal, and planning. Emma was only 5 when this started. Tyler was 6. Kendra had been setting up their deaths since they were babies. I found encrypted messages between her and Mason that read like business transactions. Kids asking too many questions about the packages. Handle it after Blake deploys. Make it look random. Home invasion. What about the life insurance? 2 million total. We split after the investigation closes. My children's lives had been worth $1 million each to their own mother. I printed everything and organized it like a military intelligence briefing. Bank statements showing deposits that coincided with major drug busts in our area. Photos of Kendra at locations where those same drugs later appeared in police evidence rooms. Text messages coordinating with Mason's patrol schedule. The pattern was clear. These dirty cops would steal drugs during raids. Kendra would launder the money through fake businesses, and they'd all split the profits. My house had been their headquarters while I was overseas protecting the country that couldn't protect my own family. But Emma and Tyler had started noticing things. Strange men coming and going. Mommy acting different. Packages that smelled funny hidden in the basement. So they decided to eliminate the witnesses. My phone rang at 4 a.m. Mason Reed's name appeared on the screen. Blake, I know it's early, but we got a break in the case. Can you meet me at the station? I looked at the evidence spread across my kitchen table. Pictures of him kissing my wife. Bank records of him stealing from crime scenes. Video footage of him ordering my children's execution. Of course, I replied. I'll be right there. This was it. They were going to try to close the case with some fake arrest or planted evidence. I was the last loose end that needed to be tied up with a neat bow. I arrived at the police station just as the sun was rising. Mason greeted me in the lobby with his practiced, concerned detective face. Blake, we think we identified the gang members responsible. Want to show you some photos. See if you recognize any of them from the neighborhood. He led me to an interview room I'd seen in dozens of crime shows. Two-way mirror, recording equipment, chairs bolted to the floor. This wasn't about showing me photos. This was an interrogation. Mason spread 6 mugshots across the table. All young black men with extensive criminal records. All conveniently dead from unrelated incidents in the past week. Any of these look familiar? Mason asked, studying my face carefully. I looked at the photos of 6 innocent men who'd been murdered to cover up the real crime. No, I've never seen any of them. Mason nodded. That's fine. We have solid evidence linking them to your home. DNA, fingerprints, the whole package. Case should be closed within a few days. What kind of evidence? Can't go into specifics during an active investigation, but trust me, it's airtight. I bet it was. They'd probably planted evidence on these men before killing them, just like they'd planted weapons in my house. There is one thing, though. Mason continued, leaning back in his chair. Your wife mentioned that you keep a lot of military equipment at home. Weapons, surveillance gear, that kind of thing. My blood turned cold. This wasn't about closing the case. This was about framing me. Just standard hunting rifles. I lied. Nothing military. Of course, but we'll need to do a complete search of your property. Protocol for cases involving potential gang retaliation. Don't want you or Kendra to be targets. He was setting me up. Plant more evidence during a protective search, then arrest me for possession of military weapons or obstruction of justice. With me in prison, Kendra inherits everything and they all disappear with their blood money. That makes sense, I agreed. When were you thinking? How about this afternoon? Give you time to prepare mentally. I stood up and shook his hand. Thank you, Detective Reed. I really appreciate everything you're doing for my family. As our hands met, I looked directly into the eyes of my children's killer and smiled. He had no idea that in 12 hours, I would burn his entire world to the ground. Because while Mason Reed had been planning my arrest, I'd been planning something much more permanent. The hunt was about to begin. I had exactly 6 hours before Mason's fake search warrant turned me into a fugitive or a corpse. Time to use every skill the U.S. Army had taught me about operating in hostile territory. First priority, secure the evidence. I made copies of Emma's video and all of Kendra's financial records, storing them in multiple locations these corrupt cops would never think to check. My old military footlocker buried in the backyard wasn't just sentimental. It was waterproof and designed to survive explosions. Second priority, surveillance equipment. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them what a special forces operator could do with proper intel gathering. I drove to 3 different electronics stores, paying cash and wearing different hats at each location. Security cameras, wireless transmitters, GPS tracking devices. Nothing illegal, everything available to civilians, but combined with military training, these became weapons of psychological warfare. By noon, I had transformed myself from grieving father into hunter. I parked outside Mason's house and began my reconnaissance. Tudor-style home in an upscale neighborhood, definitely above a detective's salary. Luxury cars in the driveway, professional landscaping, security system that probably cost more than most people's annual income. This house was built with blood money. My children's blood money. I attached a GPS tracker to his unmarked police cruiser, another to his personal vehicle, and planted a wireless camera in the decorative birdhouse across the street. Mason Reed's every movement would now be monitored by the father of the children he murdered. My phone buzzed with a text from Quinn Hayes. Hey buddy, heard Mason's doing a protective sweep of your place today. Want me to be there for moral support? I stared at that message and felt something cold settle in my chest. These monsters were so arrogant they thought I'd welcome them into my home while they planted evidence to frame me. That would mean a lot, Quinn. Thanks for being such a good friend, I replied. Friend. The word tasted like poison. I spent the next 2 hours installing surveillance equipment throughout my own house. Micro cameras in every room, audio recorders hidden in light fixtures, motion sensors that would alert my phone to any activity. When Mason's crew arrived to plant their evidence, I would have everything recorded in high definition. But I needed more than evidence. I needed leverage. I drove to the industrial district where most of the major drug busts had occurred according to police records. Empty warehouses, minimal security, perfect for storing stolen narcotics before redistribution. If Mason's crew was running a major operation, they needed a base of operations. I found it on my third location, Warehouse 47B, registered to a shell company that traced back to one of Kendra's fake businesses. 3 unmarked police vehicles parked behind the building, officers going in and out carrying duffel bags. I positioned myself on a rooftop across the street with military-grade binoculars and began documenting everything. License plates, faces, times, what they carried in and out. This wasn't just evidence gathering anymore. This was target identification. Through the binoculars, I watched Detective Quinn Hayes emerge from the warehouse carrying a bag of white powder that definitely wasn't evidence destined for the police station. He loaded it into his personal truck and drove toward the wealthy part of town where politicians and judges lived. My neighbor wasn't just a dirty cop. He was a distributor selling to high-end clients. I followed him at a distance, watching him make 3 stops. Each time, he entered million-dollar homes and emerged with briefcases full of cash. The 3rd stop made my blood boil. Judge Patricia Morley's mansion. The same judge who would probably sign my arrest warrant in a few hours. The entire system was corrupted. Police, judges, prosecutors, all feeding from the same trough of blood money that my children had died to protect. My phone rang. Mason's name appeared on the screen. "Blake, we're at your house now. Where should we start the protective sweep?" I could see him on my hidden cameras, standing in my living room with 5 other officers. All armed, all looking around like they owned the place. "Start wherever makes sense, Detective. I trust your judgment," I replied, watching him gesture to his crew to begin planting evidence. "We'll be thorough. Your family's safety is our top priority." Family safety. He was talking about protecting the wife who helped him murder my children while simultaneously framing me for crimes I didn't commit. Through my cameras, I watched Officer Adrian Cross plant a bag of cocaine behind my refrigerator. Detective Hunter Walsh hid military-grade explosives in my basement. 2 state troopers, Victor Kane and Logan Pierce, placed illegal weapons in my bedroom closet. Each planted item was being carefully photographed and cataloged. They were building a case that would either put me in prison for life or justify killing me while resisting arrest. But they made one crucial mistake. They thought I was still the same trusting soldier who'd left for Afghanistan 9 months ago. They had no idea that watching your children's murder footage changes a man at a molecular level. While they planted evidence in my house, I was planting something much more dangerous in theirs. GPS trackers were just the beginning. I'd also installed devices that would monitor their phone calls, internet activity, and even their conversations inside their patrol cars. Every crime they committed from this moment forward would be automatically recorded and uploaded to secure servers they couldn't access or delete. Mason's voice came through my earpiece as I listened to their planted evidence operation. "Make sure everything's positioned where Blake would naturally hide it. We need this to look authentic." "What about the wife?" Officer Cross asked. Kendra plays the shocked widow. Claims she had no idea her husband was dealing drugs and stealing military weapons. "She inherits everything. We get our cut. Case closed." "And if Blake figures it out?" Mason's laugh was cold. "Blake's a soldier, not a detective. He'll never see it coming." As I watched them finish framing me through my own security cameras, I realized something important. They were right about one thing. I wasn't a detective. I was something much more dangerous. I was a special forces operative with nothing left to lose. That evening, I followed the money trail deeper than any grieving father should know how to go. But I wasn't just any father. I was special forces trained in tracking terrorist funding networks. These corrupt cops had no idea they were playing against someone who dismantled Al-Qaeda financial operations. The GPS tracker on Mason's car led me to a location that changed everything. The Riverside Marina, Dock 23. I positioned myself in the shadows between 2 fishing boats and watched through night vision scope as Mason, Quinn, and 8 other dirty cops unloaded massive crates from a yacht. This wasn't small-time police corruption anymore. A man stepped off the yacht wearing a $1,000 suit. Hispanic, mid-40s, covered in tattoos that I recognized from DEA briefings. Carlos Mendoza, lieutenant in the Sinaloa cartel. These weren't just dirty cops stealing evidence room drugs. They were full partners with one of the most violent cartels in North America. "Senor Reed," Mendoza said, embracing Mason like family. "The shipment is pure. 50 kilos of fentanyl, 200 kilos of cocaine. Street value $15 million. Mason nodded toward the crates. "Our distribution network covers 6 states. Police uniforms make excellent camouflage for drug trafficking." I recorded everything through my phone, watching my children's killer negotiate the sale of poison that would destroy thousands of families. "What about the soldier?" Mendoza asked. "My sources say he's been asking questions." "Blake Morrison is a non-factor," Quinn interrupted. We've got him framed for weapons trafficking. He'll be arrested tomorrow morning. Mendoza smiled coldly. In my business, we don't leave loose ends. Even non-factors. Understood, Mason replied. Blake Morrison will have a tragic accident while resisting arrest. They were planning to execute me during a fake raid, just like they'd executed Emma and Tyler. But now I understood the full scope of what my children had discovered. My house hadn't just been their money laundering headquarters. It had been the distribution center for a multi-state drug network. Emma and Tyler had seen cartel members coming and going. They'd witnessed transactions worth millions of dollars. And Kendra had been the cartel's American banker. I followed the convoy of dirty cops and cartel members to 3 more locations that night. A trucking company that transported drugs interstate. A chain of auto repair shops that cleaned drug money. A private airfield where planes arrived from Mexico without customs inspections. This operation employed dozens of people and generated hundreds of millions in revenue. My children hadn't just been murdered to cover up an affair, they'd been eliminated to protect a criminal empire. At 3 a.m., I tracked Mason to his final stop, a penthouse apartment downtown registered to one of Kendra's shell companies. I used military climbing equipment to scale the building and position cameras outside the windows. What I saw inside made everything crystal clear. Kendra wasn't staying at her sister's house. She was living in luxury with Mason, counting stacks of cash and planning their escape to a non-extradition country. The life insurance money comes through next week, I heard her say through my listening device. $2 million, plus our cartel savings, plus Blake's military death benefits. How much total? Mason asked. $12 million. Enough to disappear forever. They were counting money earned by murdering my children while planning to collect life insurance on my death. Kendra had never been a victim in this story. She'd been the mastermind. I watched her pull out photo albums filled with pictures of Emma and Tyler. For a moment, I thought I saw maternal grief. Then I heard her words. The kids were getting too smart, she said casually. Emma found the cash I hid in her toy box. Tyler saw Quinn loading drugs in our garage. They would have eventually told Blake everything. Mason laughed. Good thing we handled it when we did. I just wish we could have made it look more believable. Blake's not stupid. Blake's a soldier who trusts the system. He'll never suspect his own wife orchestrated everything. That's when I realized the most horrifying truth of all. This hadn't been a recent decision. Kendra had been planning to murder our children since they were born. Every birthday party, every bedtime story, every "I love you" had been preparation for their eventual execution. She'd only kept them alive as long as they were useful for maintaining her cover as a military wife. The moment they became a liability to her criminal empire, she'd ordered their deaths without hesitation. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Blake, I can't sleep. Thinking about our babies. This is so hard. I love you. I stared at that message while watching her through the window, laughing and drinking champagne to celebrate my children's murders. I typed back, I love you too. See you at the funeral tomorrow. Tomorrow. The funeral she'd arranged while counting the money she'd earned by creating the need for it. As I climbed down from the penthouse, I made a decision that would have horrified the man I used to be. Blake Morrison, the loving father, was dead. Blake Morrison, the husband, was dead. Blake Morrison, the soldier who believed in justice and law and order, was dead. Emma and Tyler deserved better than justice. They deserved vengeance. And I was going to give them exactly that. The funeral was a masterpiece of deception. Kendra stood beside me in a black dress I'd never seen before, clutching my arm while cameras flashed and reporters documented the tragic military family's loss. She cried on cue. She delivered a heartbreaking eulogy about our precious angels. She even wore Emma's favorite necklace, the one Emma had been wearing when they killed her. I watched the performance with new eyes, seeing every calculated gesture, every rehearsed tear, every perfectly timed sob designed to maintain her cover as the grieving mother. But I also watched the 10 dirty cops who attended as honorary pallbearers. They stood at attention in their dress uniforms, playing the role of dedicated officers honoring fallen children from their community. Mason Reed delivered a speech about protecting our families. Quinn Hayes presented me with a folded flag in honor of your children's sacrifice. Detective Cross shook my hand and promised that justice would be served. Each of them had pulled the trigger. Each of them was counting blood money while pretending to mourn. After the service, I rode home alone while Kendra stayed behind to accept condolences from family. Through my surveillance equipment, I watched her meet Mason at the penthouse within an hour. "How did I do?" she asked, removing her funeral dress. "Perfect." Blake's completely convinced. Even the media bought it. "Good. Because I found something today that changes everything." Kendra pulled out a manila folder I'd never seen before. "Blake's military records. Did you know he's not just special forces?" Mason leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "He's classified as a Tier 1 operator. Delta Force. The guys they send when Navy SEALs aren't dangerous enough." The blood drained from Mason's face. "You never told me he was Delta Force." "I didn't know. His deployment records were classified, even for me. But I hacked his military email today." I watched through my hidden cameras as Kendra showed Mason documents that revealed the truth about my service record. 17 confirmed kills in Afghanistan. Expert marksman rating. Psychological profile tagged as exceptional operational capability under extreme stress. "Jesus Christ," Mason whispered. "We tried to frame a one-man army." "It gets worse," Kendra continued. "Look at this email from his commanding officer." She read aloud from my phone. "Sergeant Morrison, your emergency leave has been extended to 2 weeks due to family circumstances. Use this time to process and heal. Your country needs you mentally prepared for future operations." 2 weeks. They thought I only had 3 days to investigate before returning to base. Now I had 14 days to destroy them completely. "We need to accelerate the timeline," Mason said, pacing. "Kill him tonight. Make it look like suicide from grief." "No," Kendra replied sharply. "That's exactly what a Delta Force operator would expect. Blake's been trained to survive assassination attempts by professional killers. We go after him directly, we're dead." "Then what do you suggest?" Kendra smiled in a way that made my blood freeze. "We don't kill Blake. We break him. Destroy his mind before we destroy his body." She walked to a safe I'd never known existed and pulled out more files. Medical records, psychological evaluations, personal information about every person I'd ever cared about. Blake's weakness isn't physical. It's emotional. He loved those kids more than his own life. We use that against him. How? We make him believe he caused their deaths. Plant evidence that his military enemies followed him home. Make him think Al-Qaeda terrorists killed Emma and Tyler as revenge against him. Mason stared at her. "That's brilliant. Blake will blame himself instead of investigating us. Guilt will destroy him faster than any bullet. Depressed soldiers commit suicide all the time. No one questions it." I sat in my car watching my wife, the mother of my murdered children, strategize about driving me to suicide while collecting insurance money from my death. But she'd revealed something she didn't intend to. Something that changed everything I thought I knew about this conspiracy. "When did you first approach the cartel?" Mason asked. 4 years ago, right after Tyler's birthday party. I realized I was wasting my life being a military wife. Married to a man who disappeared for months, raising kids I never wanted, living on a soldier's salary. 4 years ago. Not 3 years like I'd calculated from her photos. "The cartel needed an American front," she continued. "Military wife with a deployed husband was perfect cover. But I knew eventually Blake would figure it out if the kids kept getting suspicious." "So you always planned to eliminate them?" "I planned everything. Meeting you, seducing you, recruiting you and your crew, building the drug network, getting rid of the witnesses. Blake was supposed to die in Afghanistan and make this easier, but some people are too stubborn to die in combat." She'd been planning my death since before Tyler's 4th birthday. Every family dinner, every bedtime kiss, every moment of happiness had been orchestrated by a woman who was actively plotting to murder us all. The beautiful part, Kendra continued, is that Blake still loves me. Even now, even after finding some evidence, part of him can't believe his loving wife would betray him. She was right. Even with everything I'd discovered, some small part of my heart still remembered the woman I'd married, the mother who used to sing lullabies to our children. But that woman had never existed. Mason's phone buzzed. Carlos wants a status update. The cartel doesn't like loose ends. Tell Carlos that Blake Morrison will be dead within 48 hours, Kendra replied. Suicide from grief. Problem solved. And after, we take our $12 million and disappear to Costa Rica. New identities, new lives, no extradition treaty. What about the other cops? Kendra's smile turned ice cold. What about them? You think I'm splitting $12 million with 10 crooked cops? They were always expendable. Mason stared at her. You're planning to eliminate the entire crew? Everyone except you, baby. We're partners. The rest are just tools that serve their purpose. I turned off the surveillance feed and sat in the darkness of my car, finally understanding the complete scope of Kendra's operation. She hadn't just betrayed me. She was planning to betray everyone. The dirty cops, the cartel, even Mason eventually. My wife wasn't just a murderer. She was a sociopath who'd been playing everyone from the beginning. But she'd made one crucial miscalculation. Delta Force operators aren't just trained to survive. We're trained to win. The next morning, I woke up a different man. Not the grieving father they expected to manipulate, but a tactical operator with a mission, systematic destruction of everyone who'd touched my children. Kendra had made her first mistake, underestimating military psychology. She thought guilt would destroy me. Instead, her confession had crystallized my purpose with laser precision. I began with psychological warfare. At 6 a.m., I called Mason's direct line. Detective Reed, I think someone's been in my house. What do you mean? His voice carried just enough concern to sound professional. Items moved around. Doors I remember locking found unlocked. Could be nothing, but after what happened to Emma and Tyler. Perfect. Let him think I was developing paranoia instead of counter-surveillance awareness. We'll send a patrol car by every hour, Mason assured me. You're probably just experiencing trauma-related hypervigilance. Completely normal. Hypervigilance. The exact term Kendra had coached him to use. But while Mason thought he was manipulating a broken soldier, I was implementing a strategy that would turn his entire crew against each other. Phase 1. Divide and conquer. I'd studied each dirty cop's psychological profile through military databases. Every man had weaknesses, fears, pressure points that could be exploited. Detective Adrian Cross was drowning in gambling debts despite his cartel income. Officer Hunter Walsh had a drug addiction that made him unreliable. State Trooper Victor Kane was paranoid about federal surveillance after a recent FBI corruption investigation in his district. I sent anonymous tips to each of them, designed to create maximum suspicion. To Cross, your partners are planning to eliminate you before the Blake Morrison operation. They know about your gambling debts to the Torino family. To Walsh, someone's been asking questions about your drug habit. Mason thinks you're a liability who might flip if arrested. To Kane, FBI surveillance been spotted near your house 3 times this week. Someone in the crew is wearing a wire. Within hours, my phone taps captured paranoid conversations between crew members. Cross confronting Walsh about loyalty. Kane demanding to know if anyone had talked to federal agents. Mason's perfectly organized conspiracy was fragmenting into suspicious, frightened individuals who no longer trusted each other. But psychological warfare was just the beginning. Phase 2. Evidence manipulation. I broke into the police evidence room using skills acquired during classified operations. Not to steal evidence, to plant it. I placed recordings of cartel phone conversations in Detective Cross's locker, making it appear he was secretly recording his partners for federal agents. I planted FBI business cards in Walsh's patrol car glove compartment. I left surveillance photos of Kane's house in Mason's desk drawer with federal investigation written across them. Each piece of manufactured evidence was designed to reinforce their growing paranoia while simultaneously building a legal case against them. Phase 3. Turn their assets against them. The cartel's strength was also its weakness. Carlos Mendoza was a businessman who eliminated problems efficiently. If he believed the dirty cops were compromised, he'd solve that problem permanently. I intercepted cartel communications using signal intelligence equipment and created fake police radio transmissions suggesting federal raids on cartel operations. Then I made sure Mendoza heard recordings of police informants discussing cooperation with DEA agents. The beautiful part was that some of it was actually true. Cross really was desperate enough to consider flipping. Walsh really was unstable enough to get arrested. Kane really was under federal scrutiny. I just accelerated their natural paranoia until it became self-fulfilling prophecy. But the most satisfying part was watching Kendra's reaction through my surveillance equipment. She'd returned to our house to check on me, while secretly documenting what evidence I might have found. I let her see exactly what I wanted her to see. Fake suicide notes I'd written and left prominently displayed. Empty pill bottles suggesting depression medication. Internet search history for military suicide statistics, and how to cope with losing children. Kendra was so convinced of her psychological manipulation that she didn't question why a Delta Force operator would leave such obvious evidence of mental breakdown. She called Mason immediately. It's working perfectly. Blake's writing suicide notes. He'll be dead within days. Good. Carlos is getting impatient about loose ends. Don't worry about Carlos. I have that handled too. Through my cameras, I watched her make a call to a number I didn't recognize. It's me. The Blake Morrison problem will resolve itself by Friday. But we need to discuss our other arrangement. What arrangement? Mason asked when she hung up. Nothing you need to worry about, baby. Just securing our future. Even Mason didn't know about all of Kendra's plans. She was manipulating him just like she'd manipulated me, using him for his connections while planning his eventual elimination. But I was about to give her a demonstration of exactly what happens when you threaten a Delta Force operator's mission. That night, I implemented Phase 4, direct action. I intercepted Officer Walsh during his routine patrol, using traffic cones to simulate a construction detour that led him to an isolated industrial area. When he stepped out to investigate the road closure, I emerged from the shadows wearing full tactical gear. Officer Walsh, I said calmly, we need to talk. Walsh went for his weapon, but 15 years of military training meant he never cleared leather. I know about the cartel, I continued, zip-tying his hands. I know about Emma and Tyler. I know about the drug operation. Blake, man, I don't know what you think you know, but I have video footage of you planting cocaine in my house yesterday. Walsh's face went white. Listen, it wasn't personal. We were just following orders. Whose orders? Mason's. But Blake, you gotta understand, we're in too deep with the cartel. If we don't do what they say, they kill our families too. Interesting. The lower-level dirty cops thought they were victims of cartel coercion rather than willing partners in child murder. Here's what's going to happen, I told Walsh. You're going to wear a wire to tomorrow night's cartel meeting. Record everything. Names, locations, financial details. They'll kill me if they find out. They'll kill you anyway once the operation concludes. At least this way, you have a chance at witness protection instead of a shallow grave. I left Walsh zip-tied to his patrol car with a decision to make, cooperation or elimination. Either choice served my purposes. By midnight, 3 more dirty cops had received similar visits. None of them knew about the others, but each was now forced to choose between betraying their partners or facing a Delta Force operator who knew exactly where they lived. The psychological pressure was becoming unbearable for men who'd never faced a real opponent. But the most beautiful part was watching their paranoia destroy Kendra's carefully constructed plan. Mason called her in a panic. Half the crew thinks we're compromised. Walsh is talking about federal protection. Cross wants to eliminate Blake immediately. Stay calm, Kendra replied. Everything's under control. But through my surveillance equipment, I could see her hands shaking as she said it. For the first time in 4 years of planning, Kendra Morrison was afraid. And I was just getting started. 3 days of psychological warfare had turned Mason's organized conspiracy into a paranoid nightmare where nobody trusted anyone. Now it was time for the first elimination. I chose Detective Adrian Cross as the opening move. Not because he was the most guilty. They all deserved death equally, but because his gambling debts made him the most vulnerable to cartel suspicion. Cross owed $300,000 to the Torino crime family, money he'd been stealing from cartel shipments to pay interest on his gambling losses. Perfect leverage for what I needed. At 2 a.m., I intercepted his patrol route using stolen police radio codes. Unit 47, respond to silent alarm at 1247 Warehouse District. Possible breaking and entering in progress. Cross arrived at the abandoned textile factory expecting a routine call. Instead, he found me waiting in the shadows with night vision equipment and 15 years of close-quarters combat training. Detective Cross, I said, emerging from behind a shipping container. Thanks for coming so quickly. Cross reached for his weapon, but I'd already disabled the factory's electrical system. In complete darkness, a military operator has every advantage over a corrupt cop who'd never faced real combat. Blake Morrison, Cross gasped, trying to locate me by voice. What the hell do you think you're doing? Collecting evidence about my children's murder. I activated a tactical flashlight, blinding him temporarily while I secured his weapon and restrained him with military-grade zip ties. I don't know what you think you know, but you're making a huge mistake, Cross said, struggling against the restraints. Am I? Because I have recordings of you discussing Emma and Tyler's execution with Mason Reed. Cross's resistance stopped immediately. We were following orders from the cartel. If we didn't cooperate, they would have killed our families. So you decided to kill mine instead. I showed him photos from Emma's hidden camera. Clear images of him planting evidence in my children's bedroom while their bodies were still warm. My daughter was 8 years old. I continued. My son was 6. What threat did they pose to your drug operation? Kids see things, Blake. They talk. You couldn't risk children telling their father that mommy's friends were selling drugs in our basement. Cross's eyes widened as he realized how much I knew. Kendra told you? Kendra doesn't know I'm here. She thinks you're all still useful. What do you want? I pulled out a digital recorder and placed it on a crate between us. I want names, locations, financial records, and cartel contacts. Everything. They'll kill me if I talk. Cross, look around. You're zip-tied in an abandoned warehouse at 2 a.m. being interrogated by a Delta Force operator whose children you murdered. Your survival depends entirely on how useful you are to me. For the next hour, Cross provided detailed information about the entire operation. Bank accounts, drug routes, cartel meetings, corrupt judges, dirty prosecutors. The conspiracy reached deeper into the system than I'd imagined. But the most valuable information came when I asked about Kendra's role. Your wife wasn't just the money launderer, Cross revealed. She was the operational planner. Every aspect of this network was her design. Explain. Kendra approached the cartel first, not the other way around. She convinced them that a military wife with a deployed husband was perfect cover for drug trafficking. She recruited Mason through seduction, then used him to recruit the rest of us. When did she plan to eliminate the children? From the beginning. She told us kids were too unpredictable for long-term operations. Said we'd handle them when they became a liability. And me? You were supposed to die in Afghanistan. Kendra had contacts who could arrange for you to be assigned to the most dangerous missions. When that didn't work, she decided to frame you for weapons trafficking and have you killed resisting arrest. The recording device captured every word. Cross's confession would be enough to destroy the entire network legally, but legal justice wasn't my primary objective anymore. There's something else, Cross continued, desperation making him talkative. Kendra's planning to eliminate Mason and the rest of us after she gets the insurance money. She has a contract with professional killers to make it look like cartel retaliation. Who's the contractor? I don't know names, but she's been meeting with someone from a private military company. Ex-Special Forces guys who handle wet work for hire. Kendra had hired professional killers to eliminate the men who'd murdered my children. Not from conscience or justice, but to avoid sharing the profits. Last question, I said. Where's the next cartel meeting? Tomorrow night. Pier 19, midnight. Final shipment before we relocate the operation. Perfect. I now had location, timing, and enough evidence to expose the entire conspiracy. But Cross had served his purpose, and I had promises to keep to Emma and Tyler. Detective Cross, you murdered 2 innocent children for money. You planted evidence to frame their father. You've spent 4 years poisoning communities with cartel drugs. Blake, please. I have kids of my own. I was just following orders. So were the Nazis. I left Cross zip-tied in the warehouse with a choice. He could stay there and wait for the cartel to find him when he missed tomorrow's meeting, or he could somehow free himself and run. Either way, Adrian Cross would never hurt another family. But as I drove away, I realized Cross's confession had revealed something that changed my entire strategy. If Kendra was planning to eliminate Mason's crew anyway, I could use that knowledge to accelerate their destruction while positioning myself as the survivor who exposed the conspiracy. The beautiful part was that Kendra's own ruthlessness would provide the perfect cover for my revenge. By the time the sun rose, Detective Adrian Cross had vanished without a trace. His patrol car was found abandoned with signs of a struggle, but no body was ever recovered. Mason's remaining crew received the message loud and clear. Someone was hunting them systematically. They just didn't realize their hunter was using their own paranoia and betrayals as weapons more effective than any gun. 1 down, 9 to go. And tomorrow night's cartel meeting would provide the perfect opportunity to eliminate several targets simultaneously while gathering evidence that would destroy everyone who'd participated in my children's murder. Emma and Tyler were getting their justice, one dead cop at a time. Cross's disappearance sent shockwaves through the remaining dirty cops. Mason called an emergency meeting at the penthouse, and through my surveillance equipment, I watched 9 panicked men argue about whether to run or fight. Cross didn't just disappear, Officer Hunter Walsh said, pacing frantically. Someone took him. Someone who knows about our operation. Could be the cartel, suggested State Trooper Victor Kane. Maybe they think he was skimming profits. Or federal agents, added Detective Quentin Hayes. What if Cross was already cooperating? Mason tried to maintain control, but I could see the fear in his eyes. We stick to the plan. Final cartel meeting tonight. Then we relocate the entire operation. But I had different plans for tonight's meeting. While they were panicking, I was implementing the final phase of my strategy. Instead of just eliminating them quietly, I was about to expose the entire conspiracy in the most public way possible. I'd contacted FBI Special Agent Sarah Chun through encrypted military channels. Chun specialized in police corruption cases and had been investigating rumors of cartel infiltration in local law enforcement. Agent Chun, I said during our secure phone call, I have evidence of a conspiracy involving 10 corrupt officers, cartel drug trafficking, and the murder of 2 children. Mr. Morrison, I understand you're grieving, but accusations of this magnitude require. I have video footage, financial records, recorded confessions, and real-time surveillance of tonight's final cartel meeting. That got her attention. What kind of evidence? Everything you need to prosecute everyone involved. But I have one condition, which is, I want immunity for my cooperation, and I want to testify in open court. This conspiracy needs to be exposed publicly. 3 hours later, I sat in Agent Chin's office with a team of federal prosecutors, laying out 4 years of evidence that painted a picture of corruption so deep it reached judges, prosecutors, and even my commanding officer. Your wife was the architect of this entire operation, Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Torres asked, reviewing Kendra's financial records. She planned everything. The drug network, the money laundering, the murder of our children, my planned execution, all designed to steal $12 million in life insurance and cartel profits. Agent Chin studied the timeline I'd prepared. And tonight's meeting? Final shipment. 50 kilos of fentanyl, 200 kilos of cocaine. Street value $15 million. Location, Pier 19, midnight. We'll set up surveillance. No, I interrupted. We do this my way. I go in wearing a wire, get complete confessions on record, then signal for federal raids that catch everyone in the act. Torres shook his head. Too dangerous. You're not trained for undercover operations. I smiled grimly. I'm Delta Force. I've infiltrated terrorist cells in Afghanistan. 9 paranoid cops and a cartel lieutenant won't be a problem. For hours later, I stood on Pier 19 wearing enough recording equipment to document every federal crime committed in the past 4 years. But I wasn't there as an undercover agent. I was there as bait. Blake. Mason's voice carried across the dock as he approached with 8 remaining dirty cops. What the hell are you doing here? Looking for answers about who killed my children. Mason exchanged glances with the others. They'd expected to find me writing suicide notes in my basement, not confronting them at a cartel meeting. Blake, you need to leave, Quinn said nervously. This isn't safe. Safe? I laughed. My kids are dead, my wife is missing, and I just discovered evidence suggesting police corruption in their case. I'm way past caring about safe. Carlos Mendoza emerged from the yacht with 6 armed cartel members. Senor Reed, who is this man? Blake Morrison, Mason replied. The soldier whose children were killed. He's not handling it well. The grieving father. Mendoza studied me with predatory interest. I heard about your loss. Very tragic. Tragic enough that I've been investigating who really killed them, I said, letting anger fill my voice. And I'm starting to think it wasn't random gang violence. The silence that followed was electric. 9 dirty cops and 6 cartel members all realized simultaneously that their perfect cover story was unraveling. What do you think you know? Mendoza asked quietly. I know my children discovered something that got them killed. I know there are drugs moving through this pier every month. I know some of the same cops who investigated their deaths are standing right here with you. Mason's hand moved toward his weapon. Blake, you're grieving. You're not thinking clearly. Actually, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. I pressed a button on my phone, sending the signal to Agent Chin's surveillance team. Within seconds, the pier was flooded with federal agents, SWAT teams, and helicopters equipped with spotlights. FBI. Everyone on the ground now. The next few minutes were chaos. Cartel members tried to run and were tackled by federal agents. Dirty cops attempted to identify themselves as law enforcement and were ignored. Mason grabbed for his gun and found himself face down on the dock with an FBI rifle pointed at his head. Blake Morrison is working with federal agents. Mendoza shouted as agents zip-tied his hands. This was a setup. Actually, I said, removing the recording equipment from under my shirt. This was justice. Agent Chin approached as the last suspect was loaded into federal custody. Outstanding work, Morrison. We got everything on tape. What happens now? Now we have enough evidence to prosecute the largest police corruption case in state history. Your testimony will put everyone involved away for life. But as I watched Mason, Quinn, and the others being loaded into federal vehicles, I realized something was missing. Where's Kendra? I asked Agent Chen. Your wife? We haven't located her yet. But don't worry, with the evidence you provided, she won't be able to hide for long. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Very impressive, Blake. But you forgot something important. I always have a backup plan. Check your old neighborhood in exactly 1 hour. Kendra wasn't running from federal agents. She was implementing her final contingency, one that I'd never seen coming. I raced through empty streets toward my old neighborhood, Agent Chin's tactical team following in unmarked vehicles. Kendra's message had triggered every combat instinct I possessed. This wasn't over. The backup plan she'd mentioned became clear as I turned onto Maple Street. My former neighbor's house, the Garcias, an elderly couple who'd babysit Emma and Tyler, was surrounded by smoke. Fire trucks battled flames, consuming their home, while paramedics worked frantically over 2 bodies on stretchers. Mrs. Garcia was unconscious, hooked to oxygen. Mr. Garcia wasn't moving at all. Blake, Agent Chen grabbed my arm as I started toward the scene. Don't. She's eliminating witnesses, I said, watching my children's surrogate grandparents fight for their lives. The Garcias saw everything. Kendra's cleaning up loose ends. A firefighter approached us, his face grim. Arson accelerant throughout the house. This was intentional. My phone buzzed again. The Garcias always asked too many questions about my visitors. Consider this a preview of what happens to people who help federal investigations. She was threatening everyone who'd ever cared about Emma and Tyler. We need protective custody for anyone connected to your family, Agent Chin said, coordinating with her team. But I knew Kendra better than any federal agent. She wasn't just eliminating witnesses. She was baiting me into a final confrontation where she held all the advantages. My phone rang. Kendra's number. Hello, Blake. Enjoying the fireworks. Where are you? Somewhere federal agents will never find me. But I wanted to say goodbye before I disappear forever. This isn't over, Kendra. Actually, it is. You exposed my business partners, but you forgot something crucial. I still have $12 million in offshore accounts, new identity documents, and professional killers on retainer. You murdered our children. I eliminated liabilities. Emma and Tyler served their purpose as cover for my operation. When they became risks, I handled them like any good business manager would. The casual way she discussed our children's deaths nearly broke my composure. You're sick. I'm practical. Do you know what your problem is, Blake? You still believe in justice, consequences, happy endings. The real world doesn't work that way. The real world has federal agents who'll hunt you down. The real world has countries without extradition treaties and enough money to buy new identities forever. I'll be sipping drinks on a private beach while you testify in courts that will never reach me. Agent Chun was frantically signaling her tech team to trace the call, but Kendra was too smart for basic phone tracking. But I do have one final gift for you, she continued. A truth that'll make those lonely nights in your empty house even more special. What truth? Emma and Tyler weren't just collateral damage, Blake. They were never your children. The world stopped moving. What? DNA tests I had done years ago. Emma's father is Carlos Mendoza. Tyler's father is Mason Reed. I was pregnant before I even met you, but a deployed soldier made perfect cover for raising cartel babies. You're lying. Check Emma's medical records. Check Tyler's blood type. Check the timing of when we met versus their birth dates. I seduced a soldier to provide legitimacy for children who were already planned before you existed in my life. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the sidewalk as the full scope of her deception hit me. Everything was a lie. I whispered. Everything. The marriage, the family, the love, all carefully constructed theater to support my criminal enterprise. You were never a husband or father, Blake. You were a useful prop in someone else's story. Agent Chen knelt beside me as Kendra's laughter echoed through the phone. But here's the beautiful part, she continued. Even knowing the truth, you'll spend the rest of your life grieving children who weren't yours, missing a wife who never loved you, and living with the fact that you were too stupid to save the only family you'll ever have. The line went dead. I sat on that sidewalk for 10 minutes, processing 6 years of lies while federal agents coordinated manhunts around me. Everything I'd believed about my life had been fiction written by a sociopath who'd used my love as a weapon against me. But then I remembered something that changed everything. Emma's diary entry. Daddy, if something happens to me, look for the camera I hid behind my bookshelf. She called me Daddy. Not because of biology, but because I'd earned that title through bedtime stories, scraped knees, school plays, and unconditional love. Tyler teaching me to play his video games. Emma asking me to check for monsters under her bed. Both of them running to hug me every time I returned from deployment. DNA didn't make me their father. Love did. Agent Shun, I said, standing up with renewed purpose. I need one more favor. What? When you catch Kendra Morrison, and you will catch her, I want to be there when she's arrested. That's not protocol. She murdered 2 children I raised as my own. She destroyed dozens of families with cartel drugs. She corrupted an entire police department. Protocol doesn't apply to monsters like her. 6 months later, federal agents traced Kendra's money transfers to a private compound in Costa Rica. She was arrested while counting blood money on a beach, exactly as she'd described. I was there when they brought her back in handcuffs. Hello, Blake, she said with that same cold smile. Still playing the grieving father? Still playing the mother, I replied. But Emma and Tyler got their justice. Her smile faltered. What justice? I'm going to prison, but I had 6 months of freedom spending their life insurance money. Kendra, you misunderstood something important about military psychology, which is, we don't fight for DNA. We fight for family. And Emma and Tyler will always be my children, regardless of who contributed genetic material. As federal marshals led her toward the courthouse, I realized something profound. Kendra had won tactically. She'd stolen money, eliminated witnesses, escaped temporarily. But she'd lost strategically because she'd never understood what she was really fighting against. She'd thought she was manipulating a soldier's love for his biological children. Instead, she'd created an enemy motivated by something much more dangerous. A father's love for kids who'd chosen him as their hero. 2 years later, I stood at Emma and Tyler's graves holding their favorite flowers. Sunflowers for Emma, baseball roses for Tyler. The headstones read, "Beloved children of Blake Morrison, forever in Daddy's heart." The trials were over. Kendra received life without parole for conspiracy, murder, and racketeering. Mason Reed got the death penalty. The surviving dirty cops were serving sentences ranging from 25 to life. Carlos Mendoza and his cartel associates faced federal charges that would keep them imprisoned forever. Justice had been served, but that wasn't why I visited their graves every week. I came because Emma and Tyler deserved to know their story didn't end with their murder. Hey babies, I said, kneeling between their headstones. Daddy has some news to share. The insurance money, all $12 million that Kendra had killed for, was now funding a foundation that protected children of military families. Emma's hope and Tyler's courage provided security, counseling, and support for kids whose parents deployed to dangerous places. Remember how you always wanted to help other kids, Emma? Your foundation has already helped 300 military families stay safe while their moms and dads serve overseas. A gentle breeze rustled the flowers, and for a moment, I could almost hear Emma's giggle. And Tyler, buddy, your baseball league for military kids just won their first championship. 12 teams playing ball while their parents protect our country. You would have loved being their coach. I placed fresh flowers on both graves and sat quietly for a few minutes, letting the peace of this place wash over me. The nightmares had stopped months ago. The anger had transformed into purpose. The grief had become gratitude for 6 years of loving 2 incredible children who taught me what family really meant. I need to tell you both something important, I continued. Daddy met someone special. Her name is Dr. Sarah Martinez, and she works with kids who've lost their parents in military service. Sarah understood loss, sacrifice, and the complexity of loving children who weren't biologically yours. She'd lost her own husband in Iraq and raised his daughter from a previous marriage as her own. Sarah has a little girl named Sophie who's 8 years old, Emma's age. She lost her daddy overseas, just like Emma and Tyler lost their mommy and daddy in a different way. I pulled out my phone and showed their photos to the headstones. Sophie loves baseball, just like Tyler did, and she's teaching me how to braid hair because Emma always wanted me to learn. The strangest part about healing was realizing that loving Emma and Tyler didn't require holding on to pain. They'd want me to be happy, to build a new family, to use their memory as strength rather than sorrow. I'm not replacing you, I said firmly. Nobody could ever replace Emma and Tyler Morrison. But I'm honoring you by becoming the kind of father you taught me to be, one who protects kids, fights for justice, and never gives up on family. As I stood to leave, I made them a promise I intended to keep. Every child I help through your foundation, every military family we protect, every person who learns your story and chooses love over hatred, that's your legacy. That's how Emma and Tyler Morrison live forever. Walking back to my car, I thought about the question that had haunted me for 2 years. How do you find peace after losing everything? The answer wasn't forgetting or moving on or accepting that bad things happen to good people. The answer was understanding that Emma and Tyler hadn't just been taken from me. They'd also been given to me. 6 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, school plays, and unconditional love that taught me what mattered most in life. Kendra had tried to destroy me by revealing they weren't my biological children. Instead, she'd shown me something beautiful. I'd chosen to love them, and they'd chosen to love me back, and that choice was stronger than any DNA test. That's real family. That's worth fighting for. That's worth living for. My heart goes out to everyone who understands the pain of losing someone precious. Family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who choose to love us and the love we choose to give in return. Now I want to hear from all of you amazing viewers. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments below,